I wasn't just tired. I was empty. No energy, no money, no one to lean on. And in the middle of that silence, the world still expected something from me. Work, responsibility, progress. Even when I could barely get out of bed. That's when I learned something brutal and honest. No one's coming. And if you don't lead yourself through the worst days, you stay stuck in them. It took me years to understand this. Self-discipline isn't for people who have it all together. It's for those of us who don't. It's for the exhausted, the broke, the ones fighting in silence. Because there's no one else to fight for them. Discipline isn't a luxury. It's survival. And if you've ever felt like you're trying to build a new life while dragging a mountain behind you, this video is for you. I'm going to walk you through 7 ways to master self-discipline, even when you're at your lowest. No motivation, no external support, no perfect conditions, just the truth about what it really takes to stay in motion when everything around you says stop. These 7 shifts help me rebuild from zero, not in comfort, but in pain. And I'll tell you this now. Discipline is not a feeling. It's a decision you make again and again, especially when there's no reward yet. By the end of this video, you won't just understand discipline. You'll know how to practice it when it matters the most, when no one's watching and you've got nothing left. And in the final step, I'll give you the exact principle I used to stay consistent when I had every reason to quit, and how it changed everything. Let's begin. I used to think that being tired was a good enough reason to stop, that when my body felt drained or was foggy, I had earned the right to take a step back. But I didn't realize that fatigue wasn't always physical. It was the result of too many days doing the wrong things, for the wrong people, without direction. The truth is, most of the time, I wasn't tired because I had done too much. I was tired because I had done too little of what actually mattered. You know that feeling when you go to bed exhausted, but you didn't really move forward, didn't build anything, didn't get closer to the person you're trying to become. That's not physical exhaustion. That's spiritual exhaustion, and it's far more dangerous. I used to tell myself, I'll rest today and start fresh tomorrow. But tomorrow never came with more energy. It came with more guilt, more regret, more heaviness, and the cycle repeated. Until one morning, something snapped. I had barely slept. I felt heavy, slow, irritated, and every part of me screamed, not today. But then I realized, I'd been telling myself, not today for weeks, for months. And if I didn't break that sentence right now, I'd still be saying it next year. So I stood up. I didn't stretch. I didn't journal. I didn't scroll for motivation. I just moved. One task, one decision, one tiny act of resistance. And here's what shocked me. The energy came after the action, not before. We've been conditioned to believe that we need to feel energized before we act. But that's the lie. The truth is, discipline creates energy. Movement creates clarity. Action creates power. When you're tired, your brain wants easy, comfort, stillness. But if you feed that, you weaken your own self-respect. Because deep down, you know you're not resting, you're retreating. And every time you retreat, you reinforce the belief that you only act when conditions are perfect. But what if they never are? What if tired is your new normal? What if no one's coming to give you a break? What if this is the season where you have to lead yourself, with your eyes burning and your limbs heavy? Because that's what I had to do. I started waking up and asking, what would the strongest version of me do right now? Not what feels good, not what's easy, but what's aligned with the future I say I want. And then I'd do that, even just 10%, even just for 5 minutes. Because when you're tired, it's not about doing it all. It's about doing something. So your brain sees proof that you're still in the fight. That 10% becomes 20%. That 5 minutes becomes 30. And slowly, you start to shift. Not just your habits, but your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits to feel ready. And you start becoming the person who acts anyway. There were mornings I could barely think, but I showed up. There were nights I wanted to collapse, but I still did one small thing. And it wasn't the size of the action that mattered. It was the message behind it. I move even when I'm tired, because tired doesn't decide who I am. That one shift rewired my life. I stopped making exhaustion my ceiling and started using it as a challenge. I wasn't fighting my tiredness. I was building my strength inside of it. Because let me tell you something. If you only show up when it's easy, you'll never get through what's hard. Self-discipline isn't built in clarity and comfort. It's built in chaos and fatigue. That's why way one is simple, but brutal. When you're tired, move anyway. Move because it's who you are. Move because your future self is watching. Move because comfort never changed anyone. And if you feel like you're too tired to even try anyway. That action, especially in the dark, is what separates the ones who stay stuck from the ones who rewrite everything. Because in the next step, we'll face the moment that used to paralyze me even more than fatigue. When you're broke and everything feels impossible, there's a kind of silence that only happens when your bank account is empty. Not just silence in your phone or your fridge, but in your mind. A silence that screams, you don't have enough. Not enough money. Not enough options. Not enough value to offer. I've been there, not once, but several times. Opening banking apps knowing exactly what I'd see, but still checking out of habit. Going through the day trying to think clearly while my stomach felt like it was twisted in knots. Pretending to be okay, while inside I was drowning in pressure. And in that chaos, discipline felt almost impossible. I used to think, how can I build structure when I can't even breathe? But here's what I learned in the middle of the worst financial season of my life. When you're broke, your greatest asset isn't money. It's movement. It's structure. It's proof that you're still in control of something. Because the truth is, when your circumstances make you feel powerless, discipline is how you take some of that power back. I used to spend hours thinking about what I didn't have, what I couldn't afford, what other people had that I didn't. And every minute I spent in that loop, I felt smaller. I thought I needed resources to feel valuable, but what I really needed was rhythm. So I created it. At a time when I had no clients, no savings, and no clear path, I forced myself to follow a routine. Wake up early, write for 1 hour, move my body, reach out to people, stay off distractions. Not because I was seeing results, but because I refused to let poverty decide who I was becoming. That decision changed everything. I started to feel sharper, calmer. Not because the money came in, it hadn't, but because I was finally doing what most broke people never do. I was disciplining my behavior when I had every excuse not to. Here's what no one tells you. Discipline under pressure is worth more than any paycheck, because it gives you back your agency. When you build structure with zero support, zero motivation, and zero comfort, you become dangerous, not to others, but to your own limitations. Because what else can break you after that? If you can move forward while broke, you can move through anything. It took me weeks to notice the shift. I didn't feel powerful, but I stopped feeling powerless. And that's when the first real opportunities started to appear. Because I was no longer waiting to feel ready to act like someone worth investing in. I was becoming that person through my own rhythm, through my own discipline, through the quiet decisions I made while no one was watching. So if you're broke right now, financially, emotionally, relationally, I want you to remember something. You still have one thing the world can't take from you: the ability to lead yourself. It might feel small, but showing up with consistency in the middle of uncertainty builds a kind of trust that no amount of money can replace. Start there. Build rhythm where you are. Create your own economy of self-respect. Wake up with a plan, even if no one is paying you. Honor your time, even if the world ignores you. Practice discipline, not because of what it brings, but because of who it makes you. Because you can be rich and still be lost. But you cannot be poor in discipline and expect your life to change. And maybe right now, what you need isn't another strategy. Maybe you just need one win today. One act of order. One task that reminds you, I'm still in motion. I'm still in control. Let the world be chaotic. You build your own code. Because what I didn't know then, and I see clearly now, is that all those early mornings I stayed disciplined without any reward. They were preparing me for a level of opportunity one wouldn't have survived otherwise. And just like fatigue, being broke will tempt you to stop, to wait, to spiral. But the way out isn't waiting, it's discipline. No one checked on me. No one asked how I was doing. No one held me accountable. And after a while, that silence started to feel normal. But it also became dangerous. Because without witnesses, discipline becomes a private war. And I was losing it quietly. At first, I thought I just needed someone to push me. A mentor, a partner, someone to notice when I started slipping. But days passed, then weeks. And no one came. And that's when it hit me. If I only move when someone's watching, then who am I when no one is? That question shook me, because the truth was hard to swallow. I was disciplined when I had eyes on me. Deadlines, pressure, recognition. But the moment things got quiet, I unraveled. And maybe you felt it too. You set the goal, you plan it out, but with no one checking in, it slowly fades into the background. And here's the dangerous part. You know exactly how to look like you're working. You've mastered the art of pretending to be productive, even to yourself. But real discipline, it doesn't live in performance. It lives in isolation. I remember the exact day I drew the line. I had gone 3 days without following my routine. No one noticed. No one cared. But I did. I looked around and realized, if I let this slide now, I'm the only one who'll suffer for it. No one's going to rescue me. No one's going to show up and say, hey, you're off track. Let me help. So I made a rule. Every win from now on is private, and I'm okay with that. That mindset changed everything. I stopped needing applause. I stopped waiting for support. I started showing up for one reason only, because my word meant something to me. That's when discipline got deeper, because now every small act was sacred. Waking up early, finishing that task, avoiding that distraction, not for likes, not for praise, but because I knew who I was trying to become. And I'll be honest, it was lonely at first. There were days I wished someone would call. Someone would remind me I was doing okay. But eventually, I stopped craving that, and I started replacing it with something stronger. Self-respect. Because here's the brutal truth. If you can't lead yourself in silence, you'll collapse the moment things get loud again. Life doesn't get easier. It gets more demanding. And if you don't have the muscle to follow through when no one's looking, you'll never last when everything's on the line. So I trained in the shadows. Like a soldier without a commander, I gave myself orders and followed them, even when no one cared. Especially when no one cared. That's where real discipline is built. Not in community, not in conversation, but in those quiet moments where your only company is resistance. And you move anyway. You won't always be alone. But if you learn to master your behavior now, you'll never need someone else to keep you in check again. You'll have your own code, your own compass, and nothing is more powerful than that. So if you're alone right now, and no one sees your effort, let that be your advantage. Let it refine you. Let it strip away the noise and force you to move for the right reasons. Because in that space, you're not just building habits. You're building integrity. And once you earn that, no one can take it from you. There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't come from failure. It comes from doing everything right and still feeling ignored. I'd wake up early, stick to the plan, hit every target I set for myself. But there was no applause, no validation, no one saying, I see you. Keep going. And that silence started to eat away at me. I remember thinking, what's the point of showing up if it doesn't seem to matter? That question haunted me, because I wasn't lazy. I was consistent. I was disciplined, but I was also invisible. And when the world feels indifferent to your effort, discipline starts to feel like a burden instead of a strength. But one night, while sitting alone in the dark, no distractions, no noise, something clicked. The world doesn't reward early effort. It tests it. It waits. It watches. It wants to see if you're real or if you're just performing for attention. And that hit me hard. Because the truth was, I had been looking for proof that I mattered, that my effort counted, that I was on the right path. But the only way to prove that was to keep going, even when I had no confirmation. So I made peace with being ignored. I embraced the silence. I stopped measuring my growth by how loud the applause was, and started measuring it by how quiet my excuses became. Because here's what I learned. Discipline means showing up, even when no one's asking you to, even when no one notices, even when the results are invisible for now. Most people quit in that season. They say, no one cares anyway, and they stop. But what they don't realize is that discipline was never about being seen. It was about becoming someone worth seeing. I began to understand that each day I showed up in silence, I was earning something more than attention. I was earning trust with myself. And trust, once earned, makes you unstoppable. Because now you're not waiting to feel validated. You're walking with direction, with power, with the inner certainty that you're doing what matters, even if no one claps for it. I had to ask myself a hard question. Would I still do this if no one ever knew? If the answer was yes, that's when I knew I was on the right path. Because if discipline only lives when eyes are on you, it dies the second you're alone. But if it lives in the dark, it survives anything. So I started showing up like it was sacred, like my routine was a ritual, like each day was a vote for the future I said I wanted. No fanfare, no praise, just proof. And the more I acted like I mattered, the more I started to believe it. Because that's the secret. When no one cares, you still care. You still show up. You still build. Because you're not doing this for noise. You're doing it for transformation. And slowly, silently, something changes. Not outside you, but in you. You start walking with your head higher. You stop second-guessing. You stop needing permission. You're not waiting to be discovered. You're already found by yourself. Let others doubt you. Let the world sleep on you. You keep moving. Because the time will come when your preparation will collide with the opportunity you didn't even know was waiting. And when it does, you'll be ready. You show up. You give your best. You do everything right. And still, nothing happens. No big breakthrough. No recognition. No payoff. Just another quiet day of doing the work and wondering if it's working at all. That's where I found myself. I had changed my routines, cleaned up my habits, cut the distractions. I was more disciplined than ever before. But the results didn't come. At least, not the ones I could measure. And I remember sitting in my chair one night thinking, what if this is all for nothing? That thought stung. Because discipline takes energy. It takes sacrifice. It takes choosing discomfort over ease, over and over again. And when all that effort feels like it's disappearing into the void, your mind starts to whisper, why bother? I wrestled with that voice. Day after day, I kept showing up, but I wasn't sure why anymore. Until something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just this quiet realization. Maybe the reward isn't something I get. Maybe it's something I become. And that changed everything. Because I stopped treating discipline like a transaction. If I do this, I'll get that. Instead, I started treating it like a foundation. If I do this, I'll become someone unshakable, no matter what I get. That's when I felt a new kind of strength. Not the kind you see in the mirror. The kind you feel when you face the world empty-handed. And still stand tall. Because here's what I had missed all along. Real discipline isn't about reward. It's about reinforcement. Every time you act without a prize, you prove to yourself that your values are real, that your standards aren't for sale, that your effort isn't conditional. You stop chasing applause. You stop chasing the finish line. And you start building from a deeper place. The kind of place where no one can take your discipline from you. Because they never gave it to you. That's the level most people never reach. They quit too soon. They walk away because the reward didn't show up on time. But the real ones? They become the reward. Their energy changes. Their focus sharpens. Their presence grows. Not because life handed them something, but because they proved they could stay in motion. Without a guarantee. And once you can do that, the world starts to shift. Not because it owes you, but because you've become someone who no longer needs permission to rise. I still have days where I wonder if I'm doing enough. Still have moments where the silence feels heavy. But then I remind myself, this is who I chose to be. Not when it's easy, but especially when it's thankless. And that decision, to keep moving with no audience, no shortcut, and no instant win, has made me stronger than anything success ever gave me. So here's what I offer you today. Let the action be the reward. Let the movement itself be your message to the world. I don't need a prize to stay true to my path. Because the day you stop performing for outcomes is the day you finally start leading yourself from the inside. And once that happens, you become untouchable. There's a moment in every journey where you just stop caring. Not because you're weak, but because you're tired of fighting. You're tired of doing everything right and still feeling behind. Tired of pushing forward and seeing no light. Tired of carrying the weight alone and wondering if it's worth it. I've been there. Not once. Many times. And I'll be honest, there were days I stared at the ceiling thinking, maybe I'm just not meant for this. That voice is heavy. It doesn't scream. It just whispers. Every morning you wake up drained. Every night you fall asleep without a win. And slowly, it convinces you to pull back, to take your foot off the gas, to pause just for a bit. But that pause, it turns into weeks, then months. Then you realize you're further away than when you started. And that's when I had to make one of the hardest decisions of my life. I had to stop waiting to be saved and start leading myself out. No pep talk. No breakthrough. Just a quiet, brutal truth. You either fight for your future, or you disappear into your excuses. That's what leadership really is. Not managing others, but managing yourself, especially when your whole body is screaming for an exit. I stopped looking for reasons to keep going, and I started building reasons. I wrote them down, put them on my wall, read them every morning, not because I believed them every time, but because I refused to let the version of me that wanted to quit make the decisions anymore. I gave the mic to the part of me that still had fire, even if it was small, because sometimes all you need is a flicker, one act, one move, one no to laziness, one yes to your own standard. That's leadership, not charging ahead at full speed, but moving when quitting would be easier. And once I did that, consistently, I started to notice something. My standards got higher, not because life got easier, but because I stopped negotiating with the voice in me that always asked for less. Instead of asking, "Can I keep going?" I started asking, "Who do I want to be when this is over?" Because pain ends, so does exhaustion. But the version of you that made it through, that version stays. That version walks differently. That version doesn't fold under pressure. That version doesn't need proof. They become it. So if you're at your breaking point right now, this is not where it ends. This is where you take over. No one's coming to drag you to the finish line. And that's a good thing, because it means you get to be the one who decides what happens next. You don't quit because it's hard. You don't quit because it's quiet. You don't quit because you're scared. You lead, even if you're shaking, even if you don't know how, even if the only thing keeping you moving is the fact that you promised yourself you would. That's power, not perfection, ownership. Because in the final way, I'll show you how all of this adds up, how every quiet decision becomes the foundation for a version of you that never needs to prove anything again. Just presence, just proof, just discipline lived. At some point, things begin to shift, not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you've changed. You wake up, and the voice that used to say, "Skip it, it doesn't matter," gets quieter. You start your day without needing to talk yourself into it. And when challenges hit, you no longer flinch. Because you've been through worse, and you kept moving. That's when you know. You didn't just build discipline. You became it. And no one can take that from you. Because every early morning you showed up, every action you took without reward, every time you resisted quitting, you were casting votes for a new identity. Not the version of you that hopes, or plans, or dreams, but the one that executes. The one that honors their word in silence. The one that doesn't need to prove anything, because their presence speaks loud enough. And this is the final shift. Discipline isn't something you use anymore. It's how you move through the world. It's in the way you walk into a room, the way you start your day, the way you say no, not because you're avoiding pleasure, but because you already chose purpose. And that choice has become your normal. You don't need reminders anymore. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to feel ready. You move because that's what you do now. You move because you said you would. And every time you move, you deepen the gap between who you used to be and who you refuse to be ever again. That's what this was about all along. Not chasing motivation, not seeking praise, but building the kind of self-respect that doesn't need validation. And if you're still here, if you made it through this entire video, you already know. You're not tired. You're not undisciplined. You're not lost. You're just remembering who you are. And this version of you, the one who shows up tired, broke, and alone, but shows up anyway. This version is unstoppable. If this spoke to you, subscribe now, not for the algorithm, but for yourself, so you don't forget, so you stay close to this energy. So every time doubt shows up again, you have something stronger to answer with. Proof. And if you're ready to reinforce this new identity, watch the next video now. Because discipline doesn't end here. This is where it becomes permanent.